What does a light bulb, a fish, and a flag have to do with drawing manga or anime, you may ask? Let's find out today on Vader Draws. When we first learn how to write our name, our bodies don't have the strength or coordination to do it properly. But in time, we develop the necessary dexterity. The same is true for art. So you see, these skills are all connected, and if you can write, with enough time and practice, you can draw. Now if you're like me, and studied Western comic art, you'll remember that the head is based on a general egg shape. But I found, for manga, the shape of a light bulb is more useful for your construction. Here we have a head, with the center line, the eye line, and the mouth line. For manga, you will notice the chin is more narrow in proportion to the large domed head. It tapers down to a very sharp chin, much like the bottom of a light bulb instead of a rounded egg. With these drawings here, you can see the Western-style hero was based on the egg shape, whereas the manga-style hero was based on the light bulb head construction. And both are fine examples of their own respective styles, and were drawn in roughly the same amount of time. One of the defining features of manga or anime are the large eyes. The basic shape of the eye can be broken down as a diamond with an oval in the center. The diamond representing the outer eye and the oval representing the iris and pupil. Now if you round off the corners, you get a shape like this. And you may be thinking the eye is the basic shape of a football, but that is incorrect. It is more like a childish drawing of a fish. You see, the end tapers back slightly compared to the front, not the symmetrical oval like the football. So when you're drawing your eyes, keep this shape in mind. So let's begin drawing our little manga girl by starting with our light bulb construction shape. Follow along at home. You can watch this video as many times as you need to, and pause it when necessary. Now it is important to note here, do not press down too hard on your pencil. Practice drawing lightly with a soft touch, because here we are just creating the building blocks for our character. Now in the center, draw a little oval that overlaps the central line. And don't worry, we're not drawing a cyclops here. We're just giving us a guide for the spacing between our eyes. Remember our fish? Put them on either side of the oval and indicate the eyes. Once we add the ovals for the irises, we can move on. Measuring down to the second line, draw the nose. It should end where the central line and the second line converge. Slightly underneath your second line, give a nice, pleasant smile. If you'll notice, it is drawn as a broken line. You will see this often in manga art, and it gives your female characters the feeling of having soft, delicate features. I'm just roughing in the kimono and body here. Moving on to her eyebrows, a good rule of thumb is to think of a second eye stacked on top of the first, and at the top of the eye is where the eyebrow should be. Eventually you will develop a feel for the distance, but for now, it's a good way to make sure your eyebrows are in the right place. Add ears to the side of her head. Now, hair is another iconic element of the manga style, and if you try to freehand it, it can be overwhelming and difficult. So instead, we're going to block in the basic volume of the hair and build our image from there. Start with the bangs with basically a big M shape. Draw the top of her head and continue down with a sweeping line to give the feeling that her hair is blowing in the wind. Now we could just leave it there, but with a simple trick, we can add layers of detail quickly and easily. Remember the flags we spoke of earlier? Think of them this way. These flags represent masses of hair. We will add more detail later, but for now, they simply help us plan out the trajectory of where her hair is blowing. Little things like adding one mass of hair blowing in front of your character will give your final image a sense of depth, while pulling one off to the side will give the hair more life and body. Moving right along, we're going to add the top knot of her ponytail, and since the wind is blowing to the left, everything needs to be blowing in that direction, including her ribbon. Now that the basic construction is complete, it's time to start adding the final details, so let's zoom in here and work on the eyes. As you can see, I've given you the steps to how to draw anime eyes over on the left side of your screen. You can pause the video at any time if you need to catch up with what I'm doing. As you begin to add your final line work, be sure to bear down harder on your pencil so it will stand out from your construction lines. Remember, you have to build the muscles and coordination to draw, just like when you first started writing your name as a child. So give it time, and don't give up. And don't worry if your drawing isn't turning out exactly the way you liked the first time. I want to challenge you to set aside some time to draw every day, particularly if you write comics. Learn to draw yourself, so you don't have to depend on finding an artist. Speaking from personal experience, nothing compares to the feeling of seeing your story realized just as you envisioned it in your mind. And while some may be more naturally gifted than others, everyone can learn how to draw with enough time, discipline, and dedication. You have a unique and creative voice, so put it to work and tell the stories you want to tell. Don't let your dreams be relegated to someday. Set a goal for yourself and strive to achieve it. Back to the task at hand. Let's start adding the final details for her hair. Adding these little jagged lines will simulate the look of her bangs. Now, once we get these finished here, you'll notice I'll leave a little piece flying off to the side in the direction the wind is blowing to give it more character. It's important to keep your lines loose here. And remember, since the wind is blowing her hair to the left, some of her hair should fall in front of her face as well, again adding a sense of realism to your drawing. Complete the top of her head, and with a few quick lines you can indicate the top of her ponytail, and it will look like a bundle of hair that is pulled together. Always keeping the wind in mind, her ribbon should also be blowing to the left, so make sure it's not just sitting there. Now we move on to one of the more intricate parts of the drawing, the longer strands of hair. These can be difficult to draw for beginners, or if you're wearing rubber gloves for that matter, but stick with it and keep practicing. Now if you'll notice, the first strand of hair always falls away from the larger mass. This gives it a feeling of movement. Now you can spend hours on the hair alone, and how much time you want to spend is completely up to you. The more time you take, the better your hair will look, but I'm just speeding through this drawing for the sake of this video. If you'll notice here, the hair spreads out at the end. This will give the illusion of movement. It is essential to think like an animator here, not in still pictures. No one's hair is still and motionless, unless of course they have too much product in it. But seriously, hair is soft and driven by the wind or movement, which is why it can be very difficult for beginning artists to draw. But here's a tip. Look up some slow motion videos here on YouTube, and really pay attention to the people's clothes and hair. It will help you begin to understand how hair and cloth react to motion. Try to draw the longer strands of hair with quick, smooth, curved strokes. It may be challenging at first, but it gets easier over time. To help build the strength in your hands and forearms necessary for drawing, practice drawing figure eights and simple geometric shapes over and over again in your free time. You're trying to develop the dexterity in your wrist and fingers to better control your pencil, so think of it like going to the gym for your drawing hand. Now, I like to give a little pattern to these kimonos, and as you can see here, I'm doing half of the symbol, but I always like to add one complete flower so everyone knows that's what these are supposed to be. It's just a good rule of thumb. Now we can erase our construction lines. Be careful not to erase your artwork, but this is another reason we bear down harder on the pencil for our final line work. So even if you accidentally begin to erase your details, enough of an indentation is made in the paper so you will be able to replicate it again quite easily. Now, one of the things that sets manga apart from other art styles is the lighting and shadows. So let's pretend the light is coming from her right side. And as we all know, everything the light touches gives off a shadow. And since the sun is shining on her right, the shadows will fall on her left, making it the dark side of your drawing. Her hair would cast shadows on her forehead here, and the same on the opposite side. For her face, draw a nice smooth line to edge her face on the left side, and shade it in. This will add depth to your drawing and give her a shadow under her chin as well. And since her kimono has a raised collar, it would give off a little shadow here. Remember, your shadows will always fall on the opposite side of your light source. This kind of attention to detail will set your artwork apart and give it a more realistic and professional feel. Things like hair blowing in the wind, patterns on clothes, and shadows all work together to bring interest and depth to your drawing. And while it takes time to master, the results are worth it. Add the shadow on the bottom edge of the ribbon here as it falls behind the back of her head. And as you can see here, the back-facing ribbon is behind her head and a ribbon itself, so it would have a shadow from the ribbon and her head. And there you have it, a complete manga-style girl. I hope this tutorial helped, and I hope you followed along with me. If you did, tweet an image of your drawing to me on Twitter @VaderReviews, and share this video with your friends. And always remember, with practice, anyone can draw.